What if I told you that Carl Jung discovered 10 dark truths about human nature that allow you to read any person instantly like an open book? But these discoveries are so disturbing that most psychologists avoid talking about them. Before we continue exploring these psychological secrets that can completely transform your ability to understand the people around you, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because what you're about to discover will forever change the way you see others and yourself. Carl Gustav Jung wasn't just another psychologist. He was a man who dared to dive into the darkest corners of the human psyche, places where most people fear to look. And what he found there changed everything we thought we knew about human behavior. You see, Jung realized that every single person you meet is wearing a mask. Not a literal mask, but a psychological one. He called this the persona, and it's the first dark truth that will unlock your ability to read people like never before. Think about it for a moment. Right now, as you're watching this video, you're presenting a version of yourself to the world. But is it really you? Or is it the you that you think others want to see? Jung discovered that this persona, this mask we all wear, follows predictable patterns. And once you understand these patterns, you can see right through them. The first dark truth is this: everyone is performing. Every single day, people wake up and put on their psychological costume. The confident businessman who's actually terrified of failure. The cheerful friend who's drowning in loneliness. The aggressive person who's desperately trying to hide their vulnerability. Jung taught us that the persona is like a theater performance, and most people don't even realize they're acting. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung noticed that the more extreme someone's persona, the more they're hiding. The person who's always perfectly put together, they're probably chaos inside. The one who never shows emotion, they're likely overwhelmed by feelings they can't process. This is what Jung called the law of psychological compensation, and it's your first tool for reading people instantly. Watch someone's behavior for just 5 minutes and ask yourself, what are they trying so hard to project? Then consider the opposite. If someone is desperately trying to appear strong, they're probably feeling weak. If they're constantly joking, they might be avoiding serious pain. If they're always helping others, they might be running from their own problems. The second dark truth Jung discovered is even more unsettling. We all have a shadow. This isn't some mystical concept, it's a psychological reality. Your shadow is everything about yourself that you've rejected, denied, or hidden away. And here's the disturbing part. You can spot someone's shadow by watching what they criticize most harshly in others. Jung realized that we project our own rejected qualities onto other people. The person who constantly complains about dishonest people, they're probably struggling with their own integrity. The one who's always pointing out others' selfishness, they're likely battling their own selfish impulses. The individual who can't stand lazy people, they're probably fighting their own desire to give up. This is called shadow projection, and once you understand it, you can read people's deepest insecurities and hidden traits just by listening to their complaints about others. It's like having X-ray vision into their psyche. But be warned, this knowledge comes with responsibility. When you can see people's shadows, you're seeing their most vulnerable parts. The third dark truth is about something Jung called complexes. These are like psychological programs running in the background of someone's mind, influencing their behavior without them even knowing it. Everyone has them, and they're usually formed from unresolved emotional experiences, often from childhood. You can spot someone's complexes by watching for their emotional triggers. What makes them suddenly angry? What topics do they avoid? What situations make them uncomfortable? These reactions aren't random. They're clues to their deepest psychological wounds. The person who gets defensive when their competence is questioned probably has a complex around feeling inadequate. The one who shuts down when relationships are discussed might have abandonment issues. Jung taught us that complexes are like emotional landmines buried in the psyche. And once you know where someone's landmines are, you can predict their behavior with startling accuracy. You'll know what motivates them, what scares them, and what they'll do when they feel threatened. The fourth dark truth involves what Jung called psychological types. He discovered that people process information and make decisions in fundamentally different ways, and these differences create predictable patterns of behavior. This became the foundation for personality typing systems, but Jung's original insights go much deeper. He identified that some people are primarily focused on the external world, while others are focused inward. Some people make decisions based on logic and analysis, while others rely on values and emotions. Some people prefer concrete facts and details, while others are drawn to possibilities and patterns. Some people like to have things decided and settled, while others prefer to keep their options open. But here's the key: most people are unconscious of their own type, which means they're predictable in ways they don't even realize. Once you can identify someone's psychological type, you can anticipate how they'll react to different situations, what kind of information will persuade them, and what approaches will work best with them. The fifth dark truth is perhaps the most disturbing of all. Jung discovered that most people are not who they think they are. He called this the difference between the ego and the self. The ego is who you think you are, your conscious identity. The self is who you really are, including all the parts you're not aware of. Most people live their entire lives identified with their ego, completely unconscious of their true self. They make decisions based on a false image of who they are, which leads to predictable patterns of self-sabotage and contradiction. You can spot this by watching for inconsistencies between what people say they value and how they actually behave. The person who claims to value honesty but constantly tells white lies. The individual who says family is most important but works 80 hours a week. The one who talks about being spiritual but treats others with cruelty. These aren't character flaws, they're signs of ego self-disconnection. And Jung taught us that this disconnection creates predictable psychological patterns. When someone is living from their ego rather than their authentic self, they'll be constantly seeking external validation, they'll be defensive about their image, and they'll make decisions that ultimately don't serve their deeper needs. They'll also be more susceptible to manipulation because they're not grounded in their true identity. The sixth dark truth involves what Jung called the collective unconscious. He discovered that beneath our personal unconscious lies a deeper layer of psyche that we all share. This collective unconscious contains what he called archetypes, universal patterns of human experience that influence our behavior in ways we don't consciously understand. You can read people by recognizing which archetypal patterns they're unconsciously expressing. The person who always needs to be the hero in every situation, the individual who constantly plays the victim, the one who takes on the role of the wise sage or the rebellious outlaw. These aren't just personality quirks, they're archetypal patterns that predict behavior. When someone is possessed by an archetype, they become predictable because they're following an ancient script. The hero will always try to save the day, even when it's not appropriate. The victim will always find someone to blame. The sage will always try to teach, even when no one wants to learn. Understanding these patterns gives you incredible insight into what drives people at the deepest level. The seventh dark truth Jung uncovered is about psychological defenses. Everyone has them, and they're like fingerprints, unique to each individual, but following recognizable patterns. These defenses are unconscious strategies people use to protect themselves from psychological pain, but they also reveal exactly what someone is trying to protect. Watch how someone responds to stress or criticism, and you'll see their defense mechanisms in action. Some people use denial, simply refusing to acknowledge uncomfortable realities. Others use projection, blaming others for their own problems. Some use rationalization, creating logical explanations for emotional decisions. Others use displacement, taking out their frustrations on safe targets rather than the real source of their anger. The fascinating thing Jung discovered is that people's defenses reveal their deepest fears. The person who uses intellectualization, turning everything into an academic discussion, is probably afraid of their own emotions. The one who uses humor to deflect serious conversations is likely terrified of vulnerability. The individual who always plays devil's advocate might be afraid of taking a real position and being wrong. Once you can identify someone's primary defense mechanisms, you can predict how they'll react to different situations and what approaches will work best with them. You'll also understand what they're most afraid of, which gives you profound insight into their psychological landscape. The eighth dark truth is about what Jung called the anima and animus. Every person carries within them qualities of the opposite gender, but most people are unconscious of this inner opposite. Men carry an inner feminine side called the anima, while women carry an inner masculine side called the animus. When these inner opposites are undeveloped or rejected, they create predictable patterns of behavior and relationship dynamics. You can spot someone's relationship with their inner opposite by watching how they interact with people of the opposite gender. A man who's disconnected from his anima might be overly aggressive, emotionally shut down, or have difficulty with intimacy. He might also project his anima onto women, expecting them to carry all the emotional and intuitive functions he's rejected in himself. A woman who's disconnected from her animus might be overly passive, have difficulty asserting herself, or struggle with logical thinking. She might project her animus onto men, expecting them to make all the decisions and provide all the strength she's rejected in herself. But here's where it gets really interesting. People often attract partners who embody their rejected inner opposite. The emotionally shut-down man attracts the overly emotional woman. The passive woman attracts the domineering man. These aren't coincidences. They're psychological patterns Jung identified that repeat across cultures and throughout history. The ninth dark truth involves what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden connections between inner psychological states and outer events. While this might sound mystical, Jung approached it scientifically, documenting how people's psychological states seem to attract corresponding external experiences. You can read someone's inner world by paying attention to the patterns of events in their life. The person who constantly experiences betrayal might be unconsciously seeking situations that confirm their belief that people can't be trusted. The individual who always finds themselves in chaotic situations might be addicted to drama as a way of avoiding deeper psychological work. Jung noticed that people often create external situations that mirror their internal conflicts. The person with unresolved anger issues will find themselves in confrontational situations. The individual with abandonment fears will unconsciously push people away, creating the very abandonment they fear. These patterns aren't random. They're the psyche's way of trying to resolve unconscious conflicts. The 10th and final dark truth is perhaps the most profound. Jung discovered that most people are living unconsciously, driven by forces they don't understand and patterns they don't recognize. They think they're making conscious choices, but they're actually following unconscious scripts written by their past experiences, cultural conditioning, and archetypal patterns. You can spot unconscious living by watching for repetitive patterns in someone's life. The person who keeps choosing the same type of destructive partner, the individual who sabotages themselves every time they get close to success, the one who creates the same conflicts in every workplace. These patterns reveal the unconscious programs running their life. But here's the empowering part. Once someone becomes conscious of these patterns, they can change them. Jung believed that the goal of psychological development is individuation, becoming conscious of who you really are beneath all the conditioning and programming. This is why understanding these dark truths isn't just about reading others, it's about freeing yourself from unconscious patterns that might be limiting your own life. When you can recognize these patterns in yourself and others, you gain something invaluable, the ability to respond rather than react. Instead of being triggered by someone's behavior, you can understand the psychological forces driving them. Instead of taking things personally, you can see the unconscious patterns playing out. Instead of being manipulated by others' projections and defenses, you can maintain your own psychological boundaries. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. When you can read people this deeply, you're seeing their most vulnerable aspects. Use this knowledge with compassion, not manipulation. Jung himself warned that psychological insight without wisdom can be dangerous, both for yourself and others. The ability to read people like a book isn't about gaining power over them. It's about developing deeper understanding and empathy. When you can see the psychological forces driving someone's behavior, you can respond with greater wisdom and compassion. You can help them become more conscious of their patterns, or at least avoid getting caught up in their unconscious dramas. These 10 dark truths Jung discovered aren't just intellectual concepts, they're practical tools for navigating human relationships with greater skill and understanding. They reveal that beneath the surface of human behavior lies a rich, complex psychological landscape that follows predictable patterns once you know how to recognize them. The persona someone wears, the shadow they're hiding, the complexes that trigger them, their psychological type, the gap between their ego and true self, their archetypal patterns, their defense mechanisms, their relationship with their inner opposite, the synchronicities in their life and their level of consciousness, all of these create a psychological fingerprint that you can learn to read. But perhaps the most important insight Jung offers is this: everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Behind every persona is a human being struggling with their own psychological challenges, trying to make sense of their inner world while navigating the complexities of relationships and society. When you can read people with this level of depth, you realize that most difficult behavior comes from psychological pain, not malicious intent. The aggressive person is usually afraid. The manipulative person is usually feeling powerless. The withdrawn person is usually protecting themselves from further hurt. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does provide a framework for responding with greater wisdom and effectiveness. Instead of reacting emotionally to someone's behavior, you can understand the psychological forces driving them and choose your response accordingly. As we conclude this exploration of Jung's dark truths about human nature, remember that the ultimate goal isn't to become a master manipulator, but to become more conscious yourself. The more aware you become of these psychological patterns, the more you can free yourself from unconscious programming and live with greater authenticity and purpose. If this video has opened your eyes to the hidden psychological forces shaping human behavior, subscribe to the channel for more insights into the mysteries of the human psyche. Leave a comment sharing which of these dark truths resonated most with you, and don't forget to like this video if it's changed how you see the people around you. The journey of psychological understanding is just beginning, and there are many more secrets of human nature waiting to be explored.